there is a rule that almost every wealth psychologist agrees on, a principle so counterintuitive that most people laugh when they first hear it. Financial advisors debate it, economists argue over it. And yet, when you look at the actual behavior of the wealthiest people in history, you find it over and over again like a thread running through every major fortune ever built. The rule sounds reckless. It sounds like something only an arrogant person would believe. And for most of us, everything we were taught about money, in school, by our parents, by every cautious financial voice we've ever trusted, tells us this rule is wrong. But it isn't. And today we're going to examine 5 of these counterintuitive principles. 5 rules that feel wrong when you first hear them, but that quietly separate the people who build wealth from the people who only dream about it. Reason 1. Pay yourself first before you pay anyone else. If you've ever managed a household budget, this rule almost sounds offensive. You have a mortgage, you have utilities, you have insurance, groceries, a car payment, perhaps children who need things. The idea that you would pay yourself before you paid any of those obligations feels not just counterintuitive, it feels irresponsible, like financial advice given by someone who has never actually had to worry about money. But here's what that instinct gets wrong. When you pay your bills first and save whatever is left over, you will almost always find that nothing is left over. Not because you spend carelessly, but because spending expands to meet available funds. It always has, and it always will. The psychologist Abraham Maslow identified this pattern decades ago, and behavioral economists have confirmed it repeatedly since. Humans default to present consumption. We are wired to solve today's problem with today's resources. Saving, by its nature, asks us to solve tomorrow's problem with today's money. And that is a deeply unnatural act for a human brain. The wealthy don't fight this psychology, they design around it. By automating savings the moment income arrives, before rent, before groceries, before anything, they remove the decision entirely. The money is gone before the brain has time to argue about it. Warren Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, called this the single most important financial habit a person could develop. Not because of the amount saved, but because of what it teaches the brain over time, that you are the most important financial obligation in your own life. When you pay yourself last, you are communicating, financially and psychologically, that everyone else's claim on your income matters more than your own future. And most people do this their entire lives, never understanding why wealth feels perpetually out of reach. Reason 2. Stay fully invested when the market crashes. In early 2009, the stock market had lost more than half its value. Retirement accounts had been cut in half. The news was relentless. Banks failing, companies collapsing, unemployment rising. Financial advisors were telling people to move to cash. Entire television programs were dedicated to predicting how much further markets would fall. Most people did exactly what their instincts told them to do. They sold. They moved to safety. They waited for things to calm down before they would even think about investing again. And in doing so, they locked in the worst losses of their financial lives, then missed the single greatest market recovery in modern history. From March 2009 to the end of that year, the market rose more than 60%. The people who stayed invested, who did nothing, who simply held, they recovered everything and gained substantially on top. The people who sold had to decide when to get back in, and most of them never did or came back too late. This is the cruelest feature of market crashes. The pain arrives first, and it is immediate, visceral, and visible. The recovery comes later, gradually and quietly. By the time it's obvious that the recovery has happened, most of the gains have already been made by the people who never left. John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard and one of the most respected voices in investing history, spent decades studying investor behavior. What he found was simple and devastating. The average investor earns significantly less than the average investment, not because the markets are unfair, but because investors make decisions at exactly the wrong moments. They sell during fear and buy during optimism. They do the opposite of what the math requires. Staying invested when everything feels dangerous is not recklessness. It is the disciplined application of one of the most well-documented principles in financial history. It feels wrong because human beings are not wired for it, but the data does not care about how we feel. Reason 3. Concentrate your bets. Don't spread them thin. If you've ever read a personal finance book, you've been told to diversify, spread your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's prudent, it's responsible. It is, in many ways, the cornerstone of conventional financial wisdom. And for most people, it's the right advice. It protects against catastrophic loss. It smooths out volatility. It is, without question, the appropriate strategy for someone who is not deeply expert in what they own. But here is what conventional wisdom quietly ignores. Almost no great fortune in history was built through diversification. Jeff Bezos didn't diversify. He put everything, his career, his reputation, his family savings, eventually billions of dollars, into a single company. Elon Musk didn't diversify. He put the last of his PayPal money into 3 ventures simultaneously, all 3 of which nearly went bankrupt. And he doubled down anyway. Warren Buffett himself has said repeatedly that diversification is protection against ignorance. When you know what you own deeply and thoroughly, concentrating is not reckless, it's rational. The psychological barrier here is loss aversion, the well-documented phenomenon where the pain of losing $1 feels roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining one. Diversification is, in many ways, an institutional response to loss aversion. It is a system designed to make losses feel smaller by spreading them around. But smaller losses also mean smaller gains. And if you are genuinely expert in something, a business, an industry, a particular type of asset, spreading that expertise thin doesn't protect you. It dilutes you. The rule isn't never diversify. The rule is diversify what you don't understand and concentrate what you do. Most people diversify everything, including the things they know better than anyone else. And in doing so, they guarantee that their best ideas can never fully reward them. Reason 4. Say no to income that costs you time. This one is perhaps the hardest rule on this list to accept because it runs directly against something deeply embedded in most people's relationship with money. From childhood, we are taught that more income is always better. That if someone offers you money, you take it. That turning down paid work is foolish, perhaps even ungrateful. But the wealthiest people in the world treat time as the primary currency, more scarce, more valuable, and more finite than any amount of money. Consider the pattern that researchers find consistently when studying how self-made millionaires and billionaires structure their professional lives. They decline the vast majority of potential income opportunities, not because they don't need the money, but because they have done a calculation that most people never run. What does this income actually cost me in time, and what is that time worth? A consultant who takes on a 6-month project for good money has made a financial decision, but she has also made a time decision, 6 months of capacity that cannot be used for anything else. If a better opportunity emerges in month 2, she cannot take it. The income didn't just pay her, it locked her. Steve Jobs famously said that deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. This wasn't philosophy. It was resource management. Attention, creative energy, and decision-making capacity are finite daily resources, and every income-generating commitment consumes them. The counterintuitive rule is this: The wealthiest people protect their time more fiercely than their money, because they understand that time, properly deployed, generates money at a rate no hourly income can match. Saying no to good income in order to remain available for great opportunities is not laziness. It is the most sophisticated form of financial strategy most people never learn to practice. Reason 5. Spend more on things that save you time. This final rule is where everything comes together and where it becomes clearest why wealth psychology operates so differently from conventional financial thinking. Most personal finance advice centers on one core directive: spend less. Cut costs. Find the cheaper option. Every dollar saved is a dollar invested, and this is true up to a point. It is excellent advice for someone in debt, or someone building their first emergency fund, or someone learning to live within their means. But beyond that foundation, an obsessive focus on spending less can actively slow the accumulation of wealth, because it treats all expenditure as equivalent, as money leaving, when in reality, some expenditure creates more time, and time is the engine of all wealth creation. Consider the difference between two people. One spends 3 hours every Sunday on household tasks, cleaning, grocery shopping, meal preparation. The other spends some money each month to outsource those same tasks. The first person feels financially responsible. The second person has bought back 3 hours every week. Over a year, that's more than 150 hours. For someone with specialized professional skills, that recovered time can be worth far more than the money spent to reclaim it. That is not extravagance. That is leverage. This is why you find consistently that as people build significant wealth, they begin spending on things that generate time rather than things that signal status. These are not primarily luxury purchases among the genuinely wealthy. They are time recovery mechanisms, justified by the simple calculation of what that recovered time is worth when productively deployed. The feeling that this kind of spending is indulgent is powerful and almost universal. It comes from the same place as every other counterintuitive rule on this list: a deeply held belief that money going out is always bad. But the wealthy learn, usually through direct experience, that money spent on time is the highest return investment available to anyone whose time has real economic value. Pay yourself first, before the bills, before the obligations, before the world gets its claim on your income. Stay invested when everything is falling, because recovery belongs to those who never left. Concentrate on what you know, because diversification protects against ignorance, not expertise. Say no to income that costs you time, because time is the only resource that cannot be earned back. And spend on the things that return your time, because every hour recovered is an hour that can build something. These principles don't require exceptional intelligence. They don't require luck or privilege or a perfect starting position. They require something harder than any of those things: the willingness to act against your own instincts consistently over a long period of time, when every feeling you have is telling you to do something else. That willingness, more than income, more than talent, more than timing, is what separates the people who accumulate wealth from the people who spend their lives wondering why they never quite got there.